First story, Secret UFO Nightmare, Tehran, 1976. The year was 1976 in Tehran, a city pulsing with the rhythms of tradition and the burgeoning hum of modernity. I was a pilot then, one of Iran's finest, entrusted with the sleek power of a phantom fighter jet. Our days were carved by the precision of drills and the unwavering confidence of youth, soaring above a land on the cusp of change. Little did I know, beneath the crisp autumn air and the familiar glow of the city lights, an encounter awaited that would shatter the foundations of my reality, plunging me into a nightmare painted across the velvet canvas of the night sky. It began as a ripple on the radar, an anomaly dismissed at first as mere atmospheric interference. But this blip persisted, danced with impossible agility, defying every known aircraft signature. Orders crackled through the comms, laced with an unusual urgency: investigate. My squadron and I, the vanguard of the Imperial Iranian Air Force, were tasked to intercept this enigma, to pierce the veil of the unknown that descended upon our skies. We ascended into the darkness, leaving behind the comforting familiarity of the airbase, unaware that we were not the hunters, but the prey drawn into a game beyond human comprehension. As we approached the designated coordinates, the object materialized, not as a conventional aircraft, but as something else. A craft defying earthly physics, moving at speeds that mocked our jet's capabilities, disappearing and reappearing as if space itself bent to its will. Confusion morphed into unease, then a chilling premonition as we tried to close in. This was not a mechanical malfunction, nor a known adversary. This was something fundamentally different, something that challenged the very limits of our perception. Then it happened. A light, sudden and blinding, erupted from the craft, engulfing my cockpit in an ethereal glow. My body went rigid, unresponsive. The controls, once extensions of my will, became dead weight in my hands. Time twisted, stretched, and fractured as I hung suspended, vulnerable, at the mercy of this impossible force. What transpired in those lost seconds? Was it a greeting, a warning, or something far more sinister? The answer, I feared, lay shrouded in the chilling silence that followed, a silence that whispered of a horror beyond the stars. Tehran in 1976 was a city of stark contrasts, where ancient Persian gardens nestled amidst the rising steel and glass of modern ambition. The scent of jasmine and spices mingled with the exhaust fumes of American cars, a symphony of old and new echoing through its bustling streets. Under the Shah's rule, Iran projected an image of strength and progress, a bulwark against the uncertainties of the Cold War, strategically positioned on the world's chessboard. The Imperial Iranian Air Force was a jewel in this crown, a symbol of national pride, equipped with cutting-edge technology and manned by rigorously trained pilots, myself among them. I was Captain Arash Rostami, a name carrying the weight of a proud military lineage. My father, a decorated general, had instilled in me the values of duty, honor, and unwavering loyalty to our nation. From childhood, the roar of jet engines was my lullaby, the precision of aerial maneuvers my aspiration. Joining the Air Force was not merely a career, it was an inheritance, a path etched in my blood. I excelled in flight school, mastering the intricacies of the F-4 Phantom, relishing the adrenaline and the responsibility of safeguarding our skies. Beneath the bravado, however, resided a quiet curiosity, a yearning to explore the vast unknowns that lay beyond the horizon. My wingman that night was Lieutenant Farhad Nasseri, a jovial spirit whose easygoing nature often served as a counterpoint to my more reserved demeanor. We were a well-oiled team, our skills complementary, our camaraderie forged in countless hours of training and shared flights. Farhad, while outwardly light-hearted, possessed a sharp mind and unwavering courage, qualities I relied on implicitly in the unforgiving arena of aerial combat. We trusted each other with our lives, a bond deeper than mere friendship, a brotherhood forged in the crucible of shared duty. Our superiors at Merabat Air Base, seasoned officers hardened by years of service and the ever-present tension of global politics, initially dismissed the radar anomaly with practiced skepticism. Air traffic glitches, weather phenomena, even Soviet reconnaissance probes, they had seen it all. But as the object's erratic behavior persisted, defying all conventional explanations, a subtle shift occurred in their demeanor. The dismissiveness faded, replaced by a growing unease, a hesitant acknowledgement that we might be facing something truly unprecedented. My initial motivation was simple: duty. Orders were orders, and as a pilot of the Iranian Air Force, my role was to investigate and protect our airspace. There was also a flicker of curiosity, a professional interest in the unknown technical challenge. Yet, beneath the surface of these rational motivations, a primal instinct stirred, a nascent sense that this mission was unlike any other, that we were venturing into territory where human understanding might falter, and where the comforting boundaries of our known world could dissolve into the terrifying abyss of the truly alien. As we ascended, the initial unease solidified into dread. The unidentified object wasn't merely evading us. It was toying with us, its impossible movements suggesting a calculated intelligence, not random phenomena. Ground control crackled with static-laced whispers of similar sightings reported globally, hushed-up incidents hinting at a decades-long clandestine war waged in our skies, a terrifying secret now thrust into stark, blinding light as it turned towards us. Our primary goal became clear: identify the object, ascertain its intentions, and if necessary, neutralize any potential threat to Iranian airspace. A straightforward objective on paper, but the reality unfolding in the skies above Tehran was anything but simple. The first obstacle was the object itself, its impossible maneuvers, its technological superiority that rendered our state-of-the-art phantoms feeling like relics of a bygone era. We were chasing a ghost, a phantom defying the very laws of physics we understood. Farhad, ever the pragmatist, focused on tactical solutions, suggesting increasingly daring intercept maneuvers, pushing our aircraft to its performance limits in a desperate attempt to gain a closer, more definitive visual. I, however, found myself increasingly fixated on the object's behavior, the unnerving sense of intelligence behind its evasive actions. Was it deliberately avoiding us, or was it leading us somewhere? This divergence in our perspectives, a subtle crack in our usually seamless teamwork, became a secondary challenge as we navigated the escalating tension of the pursuit. Ground control, initially directing our maneuvers, grew increasingly silent, their instructions replaced by anxious questions, desperate for any information we could provide. Their earlier confidence had evaporated, replaced by a palpable fear that mirrored our own. It became clear we were on our own, operating outside the bounds of established protocols, facing a threat for which no training manual had prepared us. This isolation, the sense of being adrift in a sea of the unknown with no guidance from above, added another layer to the mounting pressure. A subplot began to emerge from the fragmented radio transmissions, hushed whispers of similar events unfolding across the globe. Reports of unexplained aerial phenomena, military encounters with impossible craft, all suppressed, all denied. Were we witnessing an isolated incident, or were we merely pawns in a much larger, global game? A silent invasion playing out in the shadows, hidden from the eyes of the world. This unsettling possibility, a conspiracy whispered on the edges of our awareness, deepened the sense of dread and hinted at a conflict far more significant than a simple aerial intercept. The object in front of us was no longer just an anomaly. It was a potential harbinger of something far more profound and terrifying. The turning point arrived without warning, a sudden, violent intrusion into the tense dance we were engaged in. As we pressed closer, driven by a mixture of duty and reckless curiosity, the object pulsed with an intensified light, a beacon of pure, searing luminescence that locked onto my phantom with unnerving precision. It was not merely light, it was a wave of energy, an invisible force that slammed into my aircraft, rattling the frame and throwing my senses into disarray. The cockpit transformed into a strobe-lit nightmare. Alarms shrieked, warning lights flashed in a chaotic symphony of malfunction, and the digital displays flickered and died, plunging me into a disorienting sensory overload. My hands instinctively tightened on the controls, but they offered no resistance, no feedback. The stick became dead weight, the throttle unresponsive, the intricate machinery of my multi-million-dollar fighter jet rendered utterly useless. We had lost control, not through mechanical failure, but through something far more profound, far more terrifying. My body followed suit, a wave of paralysis washing over me, starting at my extremities and creeping inwards, stealing my will, my agency, my very being. Muscles locked, breath hitched in my chest, and a cold dread seized my heart as I realized the horrifying truth. I was completely, utterly helpless. Encased in my metal cocoon, strapped into my ejection seat, I was reduced to a mere observer, a prisoner in my own body, as an unknown force took command. Time warped, stretched, and dissolved as the intense light enveloped me. Seconds bled into an eternity of suspended animation, a terrifying limbo where the familiar laws of physics and reality seemed to unravel. The initial goal of identification and potential neutralization was instantly rendered obsolete. Survival became the only objective, a desperate, silent plea echoing in the face of an incomprehensible power. The status quo was shattered, the mission parameters obliterated. The inciting incident had occurred, plunging me into a personal nightmare, initiating a conflict not with a hostile enemy, but with the terrifying unknown itself, an encounter that promised to forever alter the course of my life, and perhaps my understanding of the universe. When control returned, it was as if I was surfacing from a deep, suffocating abyss. The light was gone, the paralysis receded, but the chilling silence remained, a ringing void echoing the alien encounter. My instruments flickered back to life, displaying a chaotic mess of error codes, a stark testament to the unseen forces that had just assaulted my aircraft. The Phantom, though technically operational, felt violated, its technological prowess rendered meaningless against something so utterly beyond its design parameters. My primary motivation shifted from duty to survival, to simply getting back to the ground, back to the realm of the comprehensible. Reporting the incident proved to be a new, formidable challenge. Back at Mehrabad, I recounted the events to a debriefing room filled with skeptical faces. Colonel Imani, a hardened veteran known for his rigid adherence to protocol and disdain for the unconventional, led the inquiry. His questions were sharp, accusatory, laced with thinly veiled disbelief. Hallucination? Equipment malfunction? Pilot error, Captain Rostami? His words were obstacles, walls of bureaucratic denial erected against the terrifying reality I had experienced. My motivation became proving the truth of my encounter, not just for my own sanity, but to warn others, to break through the wall of skepticism and denial. Farhad, shaken but resolute, corroborated my account, our shared testimony a fragile island of truth in a sea of doubt. However, even his support was a double-edged sword. It solidified my narrative, but also painted us both as potentially unreliable, damaged goods within the rigid hierarchy of the Air Force. A new subplot emerged, the quiet ostracization, the hushed whispers in the corridors, the subtle shift in the way we were treated. We became pariahs, carriers of an inconvenient truth, isolated by an experience that defied the comfortable boundaries of military doctrine and accepted reality. My motivation deepened beyond mere explanation. It became an obsession. Sleep offered no respite, dreams haunted by the blinding light and the feeling of utter helplessness. During waking hours, I pored over technical manuals, radar logs, any scrap of information that might offer a rational explanation, a way to categorize the impossible. This pursuit of understanding, however, became a consuming fire, threatening to unravel my sanity, to further isolate me from the world I once knew. The encounter in the sky had not just been an external event. It had triggered an internal transformation, a descent into a personal labyrinth of fear, doubt, and an unshakable conviction that something profound and terrifying had been unleashed upon our world. The official dismissal of our report became a suffocating decree of silence, descending upon us like a leaden shroud. Colonel Imani, his face contorted with barely concealed anger, now openly displayed his hostility, his words sharp and laced with disdain. He threatened disciplinary action, the weight of military law hanging heavy in the air, should we persist in what he coldly termed our delusions. He framed our harrowing experience, our terrifying encounter with the unknown, as a national embarrassment, a festering stain upon the otherwise pristine reputation of the Imperial Iranian Air Force. The stakes escalated dramatically, the subtle threat now explicit. My career, built over years of rigorous training and unwavering dedication, my honor, inherited from a lineage of soldiers, even my very freedom, now teetered precariously on the line, dependent on my silence. Farhad, initially my steadfast ally, my brother in arms who shared the chilling reality of that night, began to waver visibly under the relentless pressure. The insidious fear of professional ruin, the specter of disgrace, and the crushing weight of military retribution started fracturing our shared resolve, creating a palpable tense undercurrent in our clandestine meetings, a growing distance in our once unbreakable bond. Whispers of forced psychiatric evaluations, meant to discredit and silence us, and reassignments to remote, desolate postings, designed to isolate and bury our truth, amplified the suffocating personal threat. Intertwined with this immediate danger, the global subplot deepened its shadowy tendrils as fragmented news reports, subtly leaked by sympathetic, lower-ranking officers risking their own careers, painted a terrifyingly coherent picture of a widespread, meticulously orchestrated government-led cover-up, a clandestine global conspiracy to systematically suppress the truth of these encounters, painting a terrifying panorama of orchestrated denial stretching far beyond our individual experiences, and forcing us to confront a chilling and profound dilemma: embrace the suffocating silence and ensure self-preservation within the rigid confines of military authority, or relentlessly pursue the terrifying truth and risk utter professional and personal destruction, venturing into a darkness from which there might be no return. Despite the ever-tightening noose of official denial, a defiant ember of truth flickered within me, burning brighter with each attempt to extinguish it. The escalating threats, the insidious professional ostracization that chilled me to the bone, even the looming potential for imprisonment that cast a long shadow over my future, ironically solidified my resolve, forging it in the crucible of adversity. Silence, I finally and irrevocably realized, was not a path to safety, a shield against the storm. It was complicity in a vast and insidious deception, a betrayal of not only my own experience, but a betrayal of a larger truth that dwarfed even the terrifying encounter itself. The pivotal moment, the point of no return, arrived in a hushed and agonizingly tense conversation with Farhad, held in the dim secrecy of my quarters, where I declared my unwavering intent to break ranks, to actively seek external validation for our shared, undeniable experience, regardless of the devastating and potentially irreversible consequences that might be unleashed. This resolute decision marked a profound and irreversible transformation within me, a departure from the dutiful soldier blindly following orders, unquestioningly adhering to protocol, to a man now completely and irrevocably driven by an unshakable, almost primal need to unearth and expose the truth, even if that pursuit meant sacrificing everything I held dear, my career, my reputation, and perhaps even my life itself. Farhad's reaction to my declaration was not one of supportive solidarity, not a reaffirmation of our shared bond, but instead a manifestation of stark, palpable fear, radiating from him like a physical presence. His initial wavering under pressure, his hesitant doubts, solidified swiftly and completely into outright opposition, transforming into a desperate plea for caution, a frantic litany of warnings painting vivid pictures of imminent destruction and complete ruin. He perceived my newfound resolve not as an act of courageous defiance, a noble stand for truth, but as suicidal recklessness, a foolhardy and ill-conceived path leading inevitably to certain professional and personal annihilation for both of us. This fundamental divergence in our perspectives, this chasm opening between our core beliefs, fractured our once unbreakable bond, creating a palpable and agonizing chasm of mistrust and escalating the already unbearable tension to a breaking point, threatening to shatter the very foundation of our friendship. Our once united front, forged in shared experience and mutual trust, crumbled and dissolved, tragically replaced by a desperate and heartbreaking struggle. My unwavering and increasingly desperate pursuit of the elusive truth pitted directly against Farhad's terrified and equally desperate clinging to self-preservation. A deeply personal conflict that poignantly mirrored the much larger and more sinister battle against the vast and powerful global cover-up, setting the stage for a climactic confrontation where the stakes were no longer merely professional or political, but fundamentally existential, questioning the very nature of reality and our place within the vast, unknowable cosmos. Despite Farhad's desperate pleas and thinly veiled accusations of madness, my resolve remained unyielding, hardened by the weight of the truth I carried. Our minor confrontations, now frequent and emotionally charged, served only to solidify my path, each desperate warning from Farhad echoing the magnitude of what I was up against, reinforcing the necessity to act. He remained paralyzed by fear, a stark contrast to the burning conviction that now consumed me, creating a poignant and irreconcilable rift between us. A subtle shift in the atmosphere at Mehrabad Air Base offered a faint glimmer of unexpected hope amidst the oppressive gloom. A quiet word in the corridor, a knowing glance from a junior officer, a deliberately overlooked document left on my desk. These seemingly insignificant occurrences hinted at a clandestine network of silent sympathizers within the ranks, individuals who, while bound by duty and fear, harbored their own doubts and perhaps a hidden admiration for my defiance. This nascent, unspoken alliance, a fragile thread of support in a hostile environment, offered a surprising counterpoint to Farhad's betrayal, providing a crucial, albeit clandestine, resource as I prepared my next move. One evening, while meticulously reviewing radar logs, a futile exercise in official terms, but a desperate search for answers in my own mind, I stumbled upon an anomaly, a barely perceptible energy signature buried within the noise of the night of the incident. It was faint, almost non-existent, but undeniably there, a subtle echo that corroborated my account, a digital whisper that hinted at something beyond conventional atmospheric phenomena or equipment malfunction. This discovery, a minor plot resolution in itself, validating my sanity, if only to myself, became a crucial piece of evidence, a tangible point of defiance against the wall of official denial. Fueled by this small victory and emboldened by the subtle support from unknown allies, I initiated a carefully calculated risk. Utilizing clandestine channels hinted at by those fleeting gestures of solidarity, I began to leak carefully curated fragments of information, anonymized radar data, redacted excerpts from my flight log, subtly worded accounts of instrument malfunctions, to trusted contacts outside the Air Force, individuals with access to independent media and international press. This act, a dangerous gamble against the omnipresent surveillance and the potential for severe retribution, was a calculated preparation for the climax, a desperate attempt to circumvent the suffocating censorship and to expose the truth to a wider audience, setting the stage for a confrontation that would transcend the confines of Mehrabad Air Base and potentially ignite a global firestorm. The air at the base grew thick with unspoken tension, a palpable sense of anticipation and dread. Colonel Imani's scrutiny intensified, his gaze following me like a predator, his veiled threats becoming more explicit, the atmosphere tightening like a coiled spring ready to snap. Farhad, consumed by fear and guilt, became increasingly erratic, his behavior oscillating between desperate pleas for me to abandon my quest and resentful accusations of endangering us both, his internal conflict mirroring the larger battle unfolding around us. Despite the mounting pressure, the growing isolation, and the ever-present threat of discovery, a sense of grim determination settled within me. The stage was set, the pieces were in motion, and the climax was rapidly approaching. The minor confrontations, the subtle alliances, the hard-won validation, all served as mere preludes to the inevitable storm, a confrontation that would determine not only my fate, but perhaps the fate of a truth the world was desperately trying to suppress. The final days at Mehrabad Air Base were a suffocating gauntlet of suspicion and veiled threats. Colonel Imani's surveillance became relentless, his presence a constant shadow, his pronouncements taking on a chillingly final tone. Security around my quarters tightened, phone calls became monitored silences, and the once familiar camaraderie of the base morphed into a hostile watchfulness. The ultimate obstacle loomed, the imminent threat of arrest, of being silenced permanently before my carefully sown seeds of truth could even sprout. This final act of suppression became the ultimate test of my resolve, pushing me to the very edge of my endurance. The emotional stakes reached a fever pitch in a final, heartbreaking confrontation with Farhad. His fear had metastasized into a bitter resentment, his accusations now laced with venom, painting me as a reckless fool, a betrayer of our brotherhood, a danger to us both. His words, once comforting and supportive, now cut like shards of glass, a painful reminder of the personal cost of my choices. The narrative thread of our friendship, once a central pillar of strength, frayed and snapped, leaving me isolated and emotionally exposed, facing the impending climax utterly alone. However, amidst the suffocating pressure, a subtle shift occurred in the global subplot. The fragments of information I had leaked, whispers in the dark digital ether, began to coalesce, amplified by independent journalists and international news outlets. Unconfirmed reports, anonymous sources, and leaked documents started painting a disturbing picture of global UFO cover-ups, of governments desperately trying to control the narrative, to suppress the very truth I was fighting to expose. This external validation, the nascent stirrings of a wider awareness, became a lifeline, a beacon of hope in the encroaching darkness, signaling that the narrative threads were converging, that my individual struggle was about to become part of a much larger, global confrontation. The air crackled with anticipation, a palpable sense that everything was about to erupt. The final pieces were in place, the stage was set. Colonel Imani's patience had clearly run out, his veiled threats now replaced by open hostility, the machinery of military justice poised to crush me. But the seeds of truth had been sown, and the winds of global awareness were beginning to rise. The climax was not just inevitable, it was imminent. The final confrontation, a desperate gamble for truth against overwhelming power, was about to begin, promising to determine not just my fate, but potentially the fate of the carefully constructed veil of secrecy that had shrouded the world for far too long. The confrontation exploded into existence as abruptly as the light in the sky. Colonel Imani, flanked by armed military police, cornered me in the hangar, his voice a thunderous declaration of treason and impending arrest. This was the decisive moment, the point of no return. But as Imani's accusations echoed through the vast space, a cacophony of ringing phones and hurried footsteps erupted from the command center. The leaked information had detonated. International news agencies were ablaze, demanding answers, corroborating reports flooding in from across the globe, all painting a terrifyingly consistent picture of unexplained aerial encounters and government secrecy. Imani's authority fractured, his carefully constructed wall of denial crumbling under the weight of global scrutiny. The resolution was not a triumphant victory, but a chaotic, unsettling dawn. The immediate threat of imprisonment dissipated, replaced by a tense, uncertain standoff. The Iranian government, caught in the glare of international attention, initiated a reluctant, heavily controlled inquiry. The truth, though not fully embraced, could no longer be completely suppressed. The global subplot culminated in a worldwide awakening, a hesitant, fearful acknowledgement that humanity was not alone, that the secrets of the skies were far deeper and more profound than anyone had dared to imagine. Farhad's resolution was tragically personal. Consumed by guilt and fear, he remained entrenched in his denial, unable to reconcile with the truth or with me. Our brotherhood, once a source of strength, became a casualty of the conflict, a painful reminder of the divisive power of fear and the isolating cost of truth. My own resolution was bittersweet. Exonerated, but forever marked, I remained in the Air Force, a silent observer of a world slowly, reluctantly grappling with a reality it had long denied. The thematic closure resonated with a chilling ambiguity. The Tehran case was not definitively solved, not neatly explained. It remained an open wound in the fabric of our understanding, a constant question mark hanging in the sky, a stark reminder of the vastness of the unknown and the fragility of human perception. The horror was not just the alien encounter itself, but the chilling realization of the depths of human denial, the lengths to which power would go to maintain control, to suppress truths that could shatter the comfortable illusions of our world. This is not just my story. It is a reflection of a global truth yearning to be unveiled. The Tehran case is just one thread in a vast, intricate tapestry of unexplained events. Seek the truth. Question the official narratives. Look to the skies, not with fear, but with a courageous curiosity. The answers are out there, waiting to be found, if we dare to look beyond the comfortable confines of our accepted reality. The night over Tehran changed everything. It shattered the naive confidence of a young pilot, replacing it with a profound and unsettling awareness of a universe far grander and far more terrifying than I had ever imagined. The simple mission to investigate a radar anomaly became a descent into the heart of the unknown, a confrontation with a reality that governments desperately sought to conceal. My life after that night was irrevocably altered, no longer defined by aerial maneuvers and military protocols, but by the heavy weight of unspeakable knowledge and the quiet burden of a truth the world was not yet ready to face. The echoes of that blinding light, the chilling silence of that alien encounter, continue to resonate within me, a constant reminder of the fragility of our perceived reality and the vast, unknowable mysteries that lie just beyond the edge of our understanding. Farhad, tragically, remained lost to fear. His choice for self-preservation, for comfortable denial, consumed him, leaving him trapped within the confines of official narratives, forever haunted by the ghost of what we both witnessed. His fate serves as a stark warning. Fear can be as paralyzing as any alien ray, and the price of silence can be steeper than any external threat. My path, though fraught with isolation and uncertainty, led to a different kind of freedom. The freedom of knowing, the liberation of truth, however terrifying it may be. The moral etched in the sky above Tehran is not one of simple heroism or villainy, but a poignant lesson in courage. The courage to confront the unknown, to question authority, and to choose truth, even when the comfortable lie promises a safer path. The Tehran case, officially closed, remains open in the annals of unspoken history. The answers are still out there, scattered across classified files and whispered in hushed tones, waiting for those brave enough to seek them. My journey continues, not in the skies above battlefields, but in the quiet pursuit of understanding, in the persistent questioning of what we are told and what we are shown. The truth of our universe is a vast and complex tapestry, woven with threads of wonder and terror, and it is our responsibility to unravel it, thread by thread, to face the darkness and to embrace the light, wherever it may lead. Look up. Question everything. The sky is not the limit, it is just the beginning. Second story, David's Case, Alien Nightmare, 1992. The year was 1992. In the quiet anonymity of suburban America, life for David was predictably ordinary. Days bled into weeks, marked by the mundane rhythms of work, quiet evenings at home, and the comforting illusion of control over his reality. His world was defined by the familiar, the soft glow of his bedside lamp, the gentle hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the reassuring weight of his blankets at night. He believed in the tangible, in the explicable, in the world as presented by science and common sense. Little did he know, the foundations of his perceived reality were about to shatter, ripped apart by an event so profoundly unsettling it would redefine the very fabric of his existence and plunge him into a terrifying realm beyond human comprehension. It began subtly, a whisper at the edge of perception, a fleeting anomaly in the mundane tapestry of a typical night. A light, impossibly bright and intensely white, pierced through the darkness of his bedroom, an unwelcome intruder shattering the comforting shadows. This was no ordinary streetlight, no passing car headlight, but something altogether different, something alien. Immediately, a chilling paralysis seized him, locking him in place, a prisoner within his own body. His mind, however, remained a terrifyingly lucid observer, trapped in a state of surreal stupor as the impossible unfolded around him. Fear, primal and visceral, clawed its way up his throat, choking off any scream, any protest. The familiar comfort of his bedroom dissolved into a swirling vortex of disorientation. The next coherent memory was of being elsewhere, a place starkly unfamiliar, disturbingly sterile. He was surrounded by beings that defied earthly biology, their forms unsettlingly elongated, their features devoid of human warmth. Their eyes, vast and black, scanned him with an unnerving intensity, a silent, invasive gaze that felt like a violation of his innermost thoughts. A chilling certainty washed over him. These were not creatures of this world. He was a specimen under observation, a subject in an incomprehensible experiment. Subjected to a series of inexplicable procedures, David felt like a puppet in a terrifying play orchestrated by unseen forces. He was poked, prodded, examined, but the purpose remained shrouded in alien inscrutability. The experience was a relentless assault on his senses, a descent into a nightmare made real. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. He awoke back in his bed, the faint pre-dawn light filtering through his window, seemingly returned to the normalcy he craved. But the normalcy was a lie. Something profound had shifted within him. His senses were hyperacute, his perception irrevocably altered, and a chilling question echoed in the silence of his mind. Why him? His journey to uncover the truth, to understand the why, would lead him down a path of regressive hypnosis, unearthing buried fragments of a terrifying encounter that his conscious mind desperately sought to forget, but his soul could never escape. David lived a life sculpted by routine and predictability in the sleepy suburbs of 1992. His days were painted in shades of beige and gray, the muted tones of his office cubicle, the asphalt of his commute, the neutral hues of his modest suburban home. A meticulous accountant in his late 30s, David found comfort in order, in the precise columns of numbers that made sense of the chaotic world. He was a man of logic, of facts, of tangible realities. Science was his compass, reason his guide. Extraterrestrial life, UFOs, alien abduction. These were relegated to the realm of science fiction, late-night television fodder, and the fringe beliefs of eccentrics. He had a quiet life, content in its unremarkable rhythm, finding small joys in weekend gardening, classic novels, and the comforting presence of his tabby cat, Mr. Whiskers. His world was the typical American suburb, a landscape of manicured lawns, cookie-cutter houses, and the low hum of distant traffic. The year 1992 was a time before the internet's pervasive reach, when information, especially on unconventional topics, was carefully filtered and controlled by mainstream narratives. UFO sightings were whispered about, often mocked, rarely taken seriously in polite society. The cultural atmosphere fostered skepticism, a dismissal of anything that challenged the established scientific and societal norms. Within this context, David's experience was not just terrifying, but utterly isolating. He knew instinctively that sharing his story would invite ridicule, disbelief, and perhaps even accusations of mental instability. The beings themselves were etched into his memory with nightmarish clarity. They were tall and slender, almost fragile in their build, yet possessed an unsettling aura of authority. Their skin was a pale, grayish-white, like ash or moonlight, stretched tautly over delicate bone structures. Their heads were disproportionately large, smooth and featureless save for the immense, black eyes that dominated their faces. These eyes were bottomless pools of darkness, devoid of pupils or irises, reflecting light in a way that seemed unnatural, almost predatory. They moved with a fluid, gliding motion, silent and eerily graceful, as if unbound by gravity, operating on different physical laws. Their motivations remained an enigma, a source of constant torment for David. They communicated not through language, but through a direct, invasive form of mental projection, bypassing his ears and words altogether, planting thoughts and sensations directly into his consciousness. Their actions seemed clinical, detached, devoid of emotion. They examined him, probed him, as if he were an interesting biological specimen under a microscope, not a sentient being experiencing terror and violation. This cold, clinical detachment was perhaps the most chilling aspect of the encounter, suggesting a profound indifference to human life and suffering. David's initial motivation, upon returning to his disrupted reality, was driven by a desperate need to understand. The why echoed incessantly in his mind. Why him? Why that night? What was the purpose of their intrusion, their invasive examinations, their theft of his time and sanity? He was driven by a primal urge to reclaim his sense of control, to restore the order and logic that had been so violently shattered. His journey began with a desperate search for answers, a quest that would lead him to the fringes of accepted reality, into the murky and often ridiculed world of alien abduction phenomena, and ultimately to the unsettling depths of his own subconscious mind through regressive hypnosis. His initial motivation was simple: to understand the incomprehensible, to make sense of the senseless, and to somehow reclaim himself from the terrifying unknown. The hypnosis sessions unearthed more than fragmented images. They revealed a chilling pattern. David wasn't a random victim. Whispers from the alien thoughts hinted at a long-term observation, generations of his lineage marked. He was part of a study, a slow, insidious harvest, and the heightened senses weren't a side effect. They were a key, unlocking a terrifying, predetermined purpose he was only beginning to grasp. David's primary goal became clear: to decipher the alien agenda. The fragmented whispers from the hypnosis hinted at a multi-generational study, his family line marked for observation, perhaps even manipulation. This wasn't random, it was orchestrated, and he was a piece in a cosmic puzzle he didn't understand. His initial quest for personal understanding broadened into a desperate need to uncover the larger purpose of this study, not just for himself, but for his family, for humanity. His heightened senses, initially terrifying, now seemed like a potential tool, a key given to him by his captors, albeit unknowingly, to unlock their secrets. His first and most significant obstacle was disbelief. Sharing his experience with anyone outside of Dr. Carter felt impossible, a fast track to ridicule and dismissal. He was trapped in a solitary confinement of truth, surrounded by a world willfully blind to the possibility of alien intervention. This isolation fueled his desperation, pushing him further into his internal quest, relying heavily on the fragile threads of memory unearthed in hypnosis. Even Dr. Carter, while supportive, maintained a professional distance, her questions probing, sometimes subtly skeptical, reminding him of the inherent unreliability of recovered memories, even as she validated his trauma. Another formidable obstacle was the very nature of the alien communication. The thoughts were impressions, feelings, fragmented images, not clear-cut answers. Deciphering their intentions from these whispers was like trying to read a language without a grammar, a code without a key. His heightened senses, while offering glimpses into a richer sensory world, also became a source of confusion. Were these new perceptions genuine insights, or were they further manipulations, alien-induced distortions of reality, designed to mislead or control him? The line between heightened awareness and paranoia blurred, making it difficult to trust his own senses. A subplot emerged from his genealogical research. Driven by the alien whispers of a lineage connection, David delved into his family history. Dusty records, faded photographs, and hushed family anecdotes began to paint a strange picture. Whispers of unusual occurrences in his family history, unexplained illnesses, strange lights seen by his grandparents, all previously dismissed as folklore, now took on a sinister significance in the light of his abduction. His family history, once a comforting anchor to his identity, now became a potential map, leading him closer to understanding the long, insidious reach of the alien study and the terrifying implications for his future and the future of his bloodline. The initial goal of understanding, why me? What do they want with us? Despite the unsettling clarity brought by the hypnosis sessions, David had attempted, however futilely, to rebuild a semblance of normalcy. He clung to his routine, the predictable rhythm of work and home providing a fragile bulwark against the encroaching alien reality. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. One evening, returning home from work, he noticed it, a subtle flicker in the sky, higher and brighter than any airplane, impossibly silent. It was a distant point of light, pulsating with an unnatural rhythm, yet undeniably familiar. A cold dread coiled in his stomach. It was the light from his bedroom window, the harbinger of his abduction. This time, however, there was no paralysis, no gradual descent into stupor. The light intensified rapidly, descending with alarming speed, no longer a distant observation but a direct, targeted approach. Panic surged, overriding the lingering numbness. He wasn't in his bedroom. He was outside, exposed, vulnerable. He fumbled for his keys, desperate to reach the perceived safety of his home, but his hands trembled uncontrollably. The light grew blinding, engulfing his driveway, casting long, distorted shadows of his house. The humming began again, not a distant vibration, but a palpable pressure against his eardrums, a sonic wave threatening to shatter his senses. He scrambled to unlock the door, his movements clumsy and frantic. Just as his fingers grasped the doorknob, the air shimmered around him, distorting the familiar outlines of his house, his yard, his world. The humming intensified to a deafening roar, and a wave of nausea washed over him. He felt a disorienting lurch, a sensation of being lifted, pulled, dragged upwards, not physically, but dimensionally. His vision blurred, the suburban street dissolving into a kaleidoscope of light and color, the ground seeming to fall away beneath his feet. This was no subtle abduction, no silent incursion into his bedroom. This was overt, aggressive, a blatant disregard for his will, for his reality. The message was clear: they were not finished with him. The fragile wall of denial he had constructed crumbled, shattered by the raw, undeniable force of this renewed encounter. The urgency was immediate, visceral. He could no longer passively seek answers in the quiet confines of therapy. He was actively under attack, targeted, and he had to fight back, to understand their motives, to find a way to protect himself, to break free from their insidious grasp. His motivation shifted from understanding to survival, from curiosity to desperate defense. The game had changed, and he was now playing for his life, and perhaps something far larger than himself. The second abduction attempt, thankfully thwarted at his doorstep, left David deeply shaken but undeniably awake. The illusion of safety was irrevocably shattered. His home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a target, a beacon for unwanted attention. Sleep became a battleground of hypervigilance, every creak of the house, every passing car, a potential harbinger of the light. The heightened senses, now a curse as much as a potential tool, amplified his fear, turning the mundane world into a landscape of lurking threats. His motivation solidified into a fierce resolve. He would no longer be a passive subject. He would fight back. This shift in agency brought a new challenge. Where to begin? He was still alone, armed only with fragmented memories and an overwhelming sense of dread. His research into abduction phenomena led him to online communities, nascent as they were in 1992. He hesitantly reached out, cloaking his story in anonymity, finding solace in shared experiences, however unbelievable they sounded to the outside world. Within these digital shadows, he encountered Sarah, a woman from rural Wisconsin who recounted strikingly similar experiences, including the terrifying light and invasive examinations. Her online presence was cautious, wary, but her detailed recollections resonated with chilling accuracy. Sarah's introduction opened a new subplot, the possibility of others, of a network, however informal and scattered, of abductees. She offered a sense of camaraderie, a validation beyond Dr. Carter's professional empathy. Their online exchanges, initially tentative, evolved into a fragile alliance, a shared quest for answers. Sarah, unlike David, had actively researched local UFO sightings, uncovering a pattern in her region, a concentration of unexplained aerial phenomena that coincided with her own experiences and those she'd found online. This expanded the setting beyond David's suburban home, hinting at a wider geographical scope of the alien activity, a phenomenon not isolated to his personal experience. Another consequence was the intensification of his altered perception. It wasn't just senses, it was a shift in his understanding of reality itself. He began to perceive glitches, subtle anomalies in the fabric of everyday life, fleeting distortions in peripheral vision, moments where time seemed to stutter, echoes of the alien technology bleeding into his ordinary world. These glitches were unnerving, disorienting, but also strangely compelling. They suggested a deeper, hidden reality, a layer beneath the mundane surface, accessible only through his altered senses, a reality the aliens occupied and perhaps manipulated. His motivation deepened beyond mere survival. Now it was about understanding the nature of this hidden reality, the true extent of the alien influence, and the implications for humanity. The fight was no longer just for himself, but for everyone. David's fragile alliance with Sarah deepened, their late-night online exchanges becoming a lifeline in his escalating isolation. Sarah's research had unearthed a disturbing pattern, a cluster of abduction reports geographically close to David's suburban area, spanning decades, hinting at a localized, focused alien interest. This wasn't random, it was targeted, and the target seemed to be a specific region, possibly even connected to his family lineage. The stakes intensified. It wasn't just about his personal trauma anymore, but a potentially wider phenomenon affecting his community, his neighbors, people he knew. A new, terrifying challenge emerged from his heightened senses. The glitches were no longer fleeting visual anomalies. They were becoming tactile, auditory, even olfactory. He'd catch phantom scents of ozone and metal, feel cold spots in warm rooms, hear whispers and frequencies beyond human hearing. These intrusions blurred the line between reality and hallucination, pushing him to the brink of doubting his sanity. Was he truly perceiving a hidden reality, or was his mind fracturing under the strain of trauma? This dilemma forced a difficult choice. Trust his increasingly unreliable senses and risk being labeled insane, or dismiss them and potentially ignore crucial warnings. The fragile trust between David and Dr. Carter began to fray. As David shared Sarah's findings and his increasingly bizarre sensory experiences, Dr. Carter's professional skepticism became more pronounced. She gently suggested the possibility of shared delusion within online communities, the power of suggestion amplifying perceived similarities. David felt a chilling isolation, a sense of being trapped between two worlds, the dismissive skepticism of the established world, and the terrifying, potentially unreliable world of his own heightened perception. Intertwined with this growing isolation, Sarah proposed a risky plan: to actively seek out the source of the alien activity, to use their combined research and David's altered senses as a compass. It was a desperate gamble, a leap into the unknown, potentially walking directly into danger. David was torn. Fear screamed at him to retreat, to hide, to cling to the remnants of his old life. But the gnawing need for answers, the responsibility he felt towards Sarah and potentially others in his community, and the suffocating weight of his own terror pushed him towards the precipice of action. The tension mounted, the choice looming: retreat into denial or confront the terrifying truth, whatever the cost. David and Sarah's decision to actively seek the source of the alien activity marked a definitive turning point, a conscious stride from passive victimhood to active defiance. Their online research coalesced into a tangible location, a remote, heavily wooded area on the outskirts of Sarah's rural Wisconsin town, a recurring hotspot in UFO sighting reports and abduction narratives she'd meticulously compiled. Armed with Sarah's local knowledge and David's increasingly reliable, though unsettling, heightened senses, they prepared to venture into the unknown, trading the perceived safety of their ordinary lives for a perilous confrontation with the source of their shared nightmare. This decision wasn't born of bravery, but of desperation, a primal need to reclaim control, to understand the force that had so profoundly violated their lives. As they planned their expedition, David experienced a significant transformation. He started to perceive his heightened senses not as a curse, but as a terrifying gift, a distorted lens into a reality the aliens occupied. The glitches, the phantom sensations, became less frightening and more like clues, whispers from the alien world, guiding him, however subtly. He began to focus, to train his awareness, learning to filter the overwhelming sensory input, to discern patterns in the noise, to interpret the subtle anomalies that had once terrified him. This newfound control, however fragile, instilled a sense of purpose, a sliver of hope amidst the encroaching dread. He was no longer just reacting, he was learning to perceive, to anticipate, to potentially fight back. The stage was set for a direct confrontation, a descent into the heart of the alien mystery, with everything at stake, poised on the knife edge of revelation or utter destruction. Their journey to the wooded area was fraught with a palpable tension, the air thick with unspoken anxieties. Sarah, grounded and practical, focused on logistics, maps, supplies, a beat-up four-wheel drive truck that she insisted was less conspicuous than David's sedan. David, however, was increasingly attuned to the unsettling undercurrents of his heightened senses. The glitches intensified as they drove further north, the landscape around them seeming to shimmer and distort in his peripheral vision, the air growing heavy with a metallic tang that prickled his nostrils. He felt like they were approaching a boundary, a veil separating their ordinary reality from something else entirely. During a brief stop at a deserted gas station on the outskirts of Sarah's town, they encountered their first minor confrontation. A lone figure emerged from the shadows, a man in a worn-out flannel shirt and unsettlingly intense eyes. He approached them directly, his gaze fixed on David, ignoring Sarah completely. "You're looking for something you shouldn't," he rasped, his voice low and gravelly, laced with a strange accent David couldn't place. Before David could react, Sarah stepped forward, her demeanor shifting from cautious to assertive. She met the man's gaze squarely, her voice firm. "We're just passing through. Lost, actually." The man hesitated for a moment, his eyes still unnervingly focused on David before he slowly backed away, disappearing back into the shadows as quickly as he'd appeared. The encounter left them both shaken. Sarah, though outwardly composed, admitted she'd never seen anyone quite like him in town. David, however, felt a deeper unease, a chilling premonition that the man was more than just a local eccentric. His heightened senses screamed a warning, a subtle vibration that resonated with the alien hum, suggesting a connection, an unexpected layer of human involvement in the unfolding mystery. Was it a deliberate threat, a warning, or something else entirely? The encounter served as a stark reminder that their quest was not going unnoticed, that unseen eyes might be watching their every move. As they delved deeper into the wooded area, following Sarah's maps and triangulating based on historical sighting reports, David's senses became their primary guide. He could feel a growing resonance, a hum beneath the normal frequencies of the forest, a subtle pull, drawing them towards a specific point. The trees grew denser, the air colder, a profound silence descending, broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant caw of a crow. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the dense canopy, casting long, eerie shadows that danced and shifted around them, creating an atmosphere of growing suspense. They reached a clearing, a strangely barren patch of land in the heart of the woods. The resonance intensified here, almost overwhelming David's senses, a tangible vibration in the very air. In the center of the clearing, barely visible beneath a thick layer of fallen leaves, they found it, a patch of scorched earth, a perfect circle of blackened soil, radiating a faint, residual heat even in the cool afternoon air. It was a landing site, undeniable proof of recent activity. A minor plot resolution, confirmation that they were on the right track, that Sarah's research and David's senses were leading them closer to the truth. But the discovery also brought a chilling realization. They were not just searching, they were being led. And the destination remained terrifyingly unknown. The stage was now set, the climax looming, shrouded in both anticipation and profound dread. The discovery of the scorched earth clearing confirmed their path, but it also amplified the sense of unease, the feeling of being watched. The silence of the woods became heavy, oppressive, broken only by the frantic thumping of David's heart. His heightened senses were now screaming warnings, a cacophony of phantom sounds and distorted visuals, making it difficult to focus, to discern real threats from sensory overload. The forest itself seemed to be closing in, trees twisting into grotesque shapes, shadows lengthening and deepening, playing tricks on his already frayed nerves. The final tension was palpable, a suffocating weight in the air, hinting at an imminent confrontation. As they cautiously moved deeper into the clearing, searching for further clues, the metallic tang in the air intensified, becoming almost choking. Suddenly, Sarah gasped, pointing towards the tree line. Emerging from the dense woods, not gliding silently as David remembered, but walking deliberately, purposefully, were the beings. 3 of them, their elongated forms stark against the green foliage, their black eyes gleaming in the dim light of the forest canopy. This wasn't a distant light in the sky. This was a direct, unavoidable confrontation. Their final challenge was not to seek, but to face, to stand their ground against the very beings who had haunted their nightmares. Emotionally, the stakes were at their peak. Fear threatened to paralyze David, the primal terror of his abduction resurfacing with overwhelming force. But alongside the fear, a new emotion surged, a defiant anger, a refusal to be a victim any longer. He looked at Sarah, her face pale but resolute, her eyes mirroring his own mixture of fear and determination. They had come this far, risked everything, and turning back was no longer an option. The narrative threads converged, the mystery of the abduction, the purpose of the alien study, the question of why, all leading to this clearing, to this moment of truth. The air crackled with anticipation, the silent forest holding its breath, waiting for the climax to erupt, for the answers, or the annihilation, that lay just beyond the tree line. The beings advanced, their black eyes fixed on David, their movements fluid, unsettlingly graceful. Fear threatened to consume him, but Sarah's hand on his arm anchored him, a grounding presence in the face of the impossible. He focused, channeling his heightened senses not on fear, but on perception. He saw not just their physical forms, but something beneath, a shimmering energy field, a distortion of the air around them, the source of the glitches, the metallic tang, the hum. It wasn't malice he sensed, but cold, detached curiosity, the same clinical indifference he'd felt during his abduction. And then the thoughts began, not invasive this time, but directed, projected like a broadcast. Observation complete. Data sufficient. Termination sequence initiated. The words resonated directly in his mind, cold, final, utterly devoid of emotion. Termination? Was this their purpose? Not study, but elimination? Panic flared again, but Sarah, reacting to his gasp, understood. They're going to destroy the site? David, fueled by a surge of adrenaline and defiance, acted instinctively. He focused his heightened perception on the energy field around the beings, pushing back, not physically, but mentally, a raw wave of his own consciousness, his terror, his anger, his will to survive. He didn't know what he was doing, but it was a desperate gamble, a primal scream against the cosmic indifference. The beings paused, their movements faltering, their black eyes widening slightly, as if registering something unexpected. The projected thoughts flickered, changed, no longer cold and detached, but confused. Anomaly detected. Unforeseen variable. Recalibrating. Asterisk, it was a flicker of uncertainty, a crack in their monolithic facade. David pushed harder, focusing all his fear, his trauma, his outrage into a mental wave, broadcasting his experience, his violation, his humanity directly at them. He poured his soul into that silent scream, a desperate plea for recognition, for understanding, for mercy. The clearing shimmered, the air crackled with energy, not hostile, but reactive. The beings recoiled slightly, their forms blurring, the energy field around them fluctuating wildly. Then, as abruptly as they had appeared, they were gone. The clearing was silent again, the metallic tang fading, the oppressive tension lifting. They were alone. The climax was not a battle, but a desperate, silent communication, a confrontation not of weapons, but of consciousness. The resolution was uncertain, incomplete, but profoundly changed. The abduction had stopped, for now. The why remained unanswered in concrete terms, but David understood, on a visceral level, that they were not monsters, but something else, something beyond human comprehension, driven by a logic alien to human empathy. His heightened senses remained, a permanent scar, a constant reminder of the encounter, but also a testament to his survival, his defiance. Thematic closure was bittersweet. The horror of the abduction remained indelible, but David and Sarah found solace in shared experience, in their defiance. The world was irrevocably altered, the comfortable illusion of normalcy shattered, replaced by a chilling awareness of unseen forces, of realities beyond human grasp. But within that terror, a fragile hope emerged, the possibility of understanding, of communication, of perhaps influencing the cosmic indifference. If you have ever felt a tremor of unease in the night, a fleeting sense of being watched, a whisper at the edge of reality, remember David's story. You are not alone. Seek the truth, however terrifying, and never underestimate the power of your own consciousness in the face of the unknown. The silence that followed their encounter in the woods was profound, a stark contrast to the terrifying hum that had haunted David's reality. They left the clearing, carrying not definitive answers, but a shift in perspective, a shared trauma that forged an unlikely bond. David's heightened senses remained, no longer a source of pure terror, but a constant reminder of a reality beyond the veil, a world teeming with unseen forces. He never fully understood the why of his abduction, the precise purpose of the alien study, but he grasped a chilling truth. Humanity was not alone, and perhaps not as significant in the cosmic order as he once believed. The experience shattered his comfortable worldview, replacing it with a profound sense of awe and a lingering unease. In the years that followed, David and Sarah remained connected, their shared experience a silent language between them. Dr. Carter, initially skeptical, witnessed David's transformation, his quiet acceptance of the inexplicable, and a newfound depth in his perception of the world. David never fully returned to the predictable routine of his former life. The beige and gray world had been irrevocably colored by the alien light. He became an observer, attuned to the subtle anomalies, the glitches in the matrix, forever aware of the unseen currents flowing beneath the surface of the mundane. His fate was not to forget, but to remember, to carry the weight of his knowledge, and to stand as a quiet testament to the terrifying, awe-inspiring, and ultimately unknowable vastness of the universe. David's case remains open, unresolved in the grand tapestry of history, a chilling whisper in the face of accepted reality. If you dismiss stories like David's as fantasy, as delusion, consider the silence in the woods, the cold light in the window, the persistent question that echoes in the dark corners of our minds. What if? Perhaps the true horror isn't the abduction itself, but the chilling possibility that we are not alone, that we are observed, studied, and that the universe holds mysteries far beyond our current comprehension. Listen closely to the whispers, question the comfortable narratives, and remember David's story, a stark reminder that the unknown is not always distant stars, but sometimes a light coming through your bedroom window.
If you're enjoying this and want to support the channel in bringing more chilling stories like this, any contribution is greatly appreciated. The donation link is just below this video. It's safe, easy, and fast. No registration required. Even the smallest support means so much. Thank you for joining me on this journey.
Third story, Alien Implant. The hum was just the start. Phoenix, 1994. The hum was the first sign, a subtle vibration more felt than heard, resonating through the sterile quiet of the hotel room. It was a sound easily dismissed, the white noise of a city breathing around you, the distant drone of traffic or the building's own mechanical pulse. But in the still of that Phoenix night, it prickled at the edge of my awareness, an unwelcome guest in the manufactured calm of my business trip. I was John, just another face in the transient world of corporate travel, my life measured in flight miles and hotel loyalty points. These trips were mundane, predictable, a carefully constructed routine to navigate the complexities of my work, a life deliberately sculpted to be ordinary, safe, and above all, unremarkable. Phoenix in August was a furnace, even late into the evening, the air thick and heavy despite the aggressive air conditioning struggling against the desert heat outside. My hotel room was a standard issue, a beige box designed for temporary inhabitation, furnished with the generic comforts intended to soothe the weary traveler. I'd gone through the motions, unpacked, ordered room service, a forgettable sandwich and a lukewarm coffee, flipped through channels on the muted television, each program blurring into the next, none able to truly capture my attention. The fatigue from the day's travel and meetings was a dull ache behind my eyes, a heavy blanket settling over my limbs, urging me towards sleep. Switching off the bedside lamp plunged the room into a manufactured darkness, thick curtains designed to banish the city lights and create an illusion of peaceful night. I closed my eyes, expecting the familiar drift into unconsciousness, the oblivion of sleep that usually claimed me swiftly after days like these. But sleep was elusive. The humming persisted, no longer ignorable, now a distinct thrumming that vibrated through the mattress, through the very floor beneath me, a physical presence in the silence. It was joined by a light, impossibly bright, seeping in around the edges of the blackout curtains, painting stripes of an unnatural white across the ceiling. It was then, as disorientation wrestled with the growing dread, that I felt it, a lifting, a lightness, an impossible detachment from the very bed I lay upon. Before rational thought could form, before I could even scream, I was rising, floating, pulled upwards with an unseen force, the window, strangely luminous, now the focal point of my terrifying ascent. The mundane reality of the hotel room fractured, dissolving into a nightmare made tangible. What followed was not a clear narrative, but a chaotic storm of fractured sensations, cold, sterile air, metallic scents, the unsettling geometry of impossible spaces and figures, tall and gaunt, with eyes like bottomless pits of night. They moved around me, touched me with hands that felt like ice, their purpose inscrutable, their presence terrifying. Time twisted, stretched, and snapped, becoming meaningless in their silent, probing presence. When awareness returned, I was back, inexplicably back in the same hotel room, the lingering hum now a distant echo, the bright light extinguished, leaving only the unsettling residue of a violation I couldn't explain, but knew with chilling certainty was real. What had they wanted? And more terrifyingly, what had they taken? Or left behind? The year was 1994. The world felt, in many ways, simpler. Before the ubiquitous internet, before smartphones dominated every waking moment, life unfolded at a slightly slower pace. For John, a sales executive in his late 30s, life was a predictable rhythm of airport terminals, rental cars, and handshake deals. His world was one of scheduled calls, PowerPoint presentations, and carefully curated small talk. He carved out a life of routine, a deliberate structure built to contain a quiet unease he rarely acknowledged, even to himself. This business trip to Phoenix was no different. A necessary detour in the well-worn path of his career, another city, another hotel room, another series of meetings blurring into one continuous, unremarkable flow. Beneath the surface of his outwardly successful life, however, lay a subtle current of discontent. John, despite his professional achievements, harbored a nagging sense of emptiness, a quiet question mark hovering over his carefully constructed reality. The relentless travel, once a source of excitement, now felt isolating, each city a fleeting backdrop to a life lived in transit. He longed for something more substantial, something beyond the quarterly targets and performance reviews, a connection that transcended the transactional nature of his work. Yet, he pushed these feelings down, burying them beneath the demands of his job and the expectations he had built around himself. He was John, the reliable, predictable, and thoroughly ordinary businessman. Phoenix in August was a sweltering oven, the desert heat clinging to the air even after sunset. The city itself, a sprawling grid of lights in the vast Arizona landscape, felt both anonymous and exposed, a fragile outpost against the immensity of the surrounding wilderness. John's hotel, a towering glass and steel structure, offered a sterile refuge from the external environment, a climate-controlled bubble of manufactured comfort. But even within its walls, a sense of isolation persisted, a feeling of being disconnected from the pulse of real life, adrift in a sea of transient strangers and echoing corridors. He sought solace in the routine, the predictable comfort of the familiar, a shield against the nameless anxieties that sometimes crept into the edges of his awareness. That night, however, the routine fractured. The hum, the light, the impossible levitation, these weren't part of the plan, not components of the carefully constructed world John had built around himself. They were intrusions, violations, cracks in the facade of normalcy, revealing something terrifying and unknowable lurking just beneath the surface of the everyday. His initial motivation for the trip, the mundane pursuit of business success, became instantly irrelevant, dwarfed by the overwhelming reality of what was happening. John, the ordinary businessman, was about to confront something profoundly extraordinary, something that would shatter his carefully constructed world and force him to question everything he thought he knew. Back in the sterile room, John was irrevocably changed. A chilling void replaced his former normalcy. Haunting flashes, cold alien hands, vast black eyes, sterile metal, blinding light, now invaded his every thought. He felt subtly yet profoundly altered, a discordant note in his own being, like a dormant alien program abruptly activated within. The ordinary night was a cruel deception, the curtain ripped aside, exposing a terrifying, unknown reality. He was no longer just John. He was changed. Waking up back in his hotel room felt less like a return, and more like a cruel trick of the light. The memory of the cold table, the alien faces, was vivid, visceral, yet utterly impossible within the confines of his rational world. John's immediate goal became clear: to understand. Not just what had happened, but why, and what it meant for him now. The first obstacle was the sheer absurdity of it all. How could he explain levitation, alien beings, missing time, to anyone without sounding insane? He was trapped in a silent, internal battle against disbelief, armed with fragmented memories and a chilling certainty that his life had been irrevocably altered. Sleep offered no escape, only a replay of the terror. Nightmares plagued him, vivid scenes of metallic interiors, probing touches, and those vast, black eyes that seemed to see through him, into him, beyond him. He woke each morning exhausted, the lingering dread a heavy shroud. He felt different, subtly changed at a fundamental level, a disquieting sense that something had been implanted, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. This internal shift became a constant, gnawing anxiety, a relentless undercurrent to his waking hours. He tried to rationalize, to find a logical explanation. Stress? Hallucination? A vivid dream fueled by travel fatigue and bad room service? He replayed the events of the previous day in his mind, searching for triggers, for anything that could explain the impossible. But logic failed him. The light, the craft, the levitation, none of it fit within the known laws of physics, within the boundaries of his understanding of reality. The rational businessman in him struggled against the terrifying truth that screamed from the depths of his subconscious. Driven by a desperate need for answers, John turned to research, a familiar comfort zone of information gathering. He started subtly, online searches late at night in the privacy of his home, venturing into the uncharted territories of UFO sightings and alien abduction accounts. He discovered a hidden world, a community of individuals who claimed similar experiences, their stories echoing his own with unnerving detail. This discovery offered a flicker of validation, a fragile thread of hope that he wasn't alone, that he wasn't losing his mind. However, the growing obsession began to bleed into his personal life. His wife, Sarah, noticed the change in him, the withdrawal, the anxiety, the haunted look in his eyes. She asked questions, offered concern, but John, trapped by fear and disbelief, deflected, offering vague excuses of work stress and travel fatigue. The distance between them widened, a chasm of unspoken terror and growing misunderstanding. His silence became another obstacle, isolating him further, trapping him in his own private nightmare, unable to share the burden of his truth. The normalcy John desperately clung to shattered completely one ordinary Tuesday morning. He was in the middle of a routine sales presentation, the practiced words flowing smoothly, when a searing pain erupted behind his eyes. It wasn't a headache, it was sharper, more focused, like a white-hot needle piercing his brain. The room swam, the faces of his potential clients blurring into indistinct shapes, and the polished presentation slides dissolving into meaningless light. He stumbled, words failing him, a cold sweat breaking out across his skin as the pain intensified, radiating outwards from some unseen epicenter within his skull. The meeting abruptly ended in concerned murmurs and hasty apologies. John, disoriented and trembling, barely managed to drive himself home, the throbbing in his head a relentless drumbeat of agony. Lying in the darkened quiet of his bedroom, the pain slowly subsided, leaving behind a lingering nausea and a profound sense of unease. But it wasn't just the physical pain, it was the chilling familiarity of it. The intensity, the sudden onset, the strange, focused nature of it, it echoed, disturbingly, the sensations he vaguely recalled from the craft, the probing touches, the feeling of being manipulated by forces beyond his understanding. This wasn't a stress headache. This was something else, something connected to that night in Phoenix, something alien. The incident ripped through the fragile wall of denial he had built around himself. He could no longer dismiss it as a bad dream, a hallucination. The pain was real, physical, and undeniably triggered by something outside the realm of ordinary experience. The comfortable routine of his life, already frayed by the lingering trauma of the abduction, now fractured completely. The status quo was irrevocably broken. Fear morphed into a desperate need for action. He couldn't ignore it anymore. He couldn't pretend it hadn't happened. The pain was a wake-up call, a brutal reminder that whatever had occurred in that hotel room was not over, that it was still actively impacting his life, his body, his mind. His goal shifted from mere understanding to survival. He had to find out what was happening to him, what they had done to him, and how to stop it. The initial, paralyzing fear was replaced by a surging urgency, a desperate drive to reclaim control, to fight back against the unseen force that had invaded his life. The presentation, the business trip, his carefully constructed world, all became secondary to this new, terrifying imperative. Unravel the mystery of the abduction and understand what they wanted before it destroyed him completely. The searing headache left John shaken, not just physically but mentally adrift. The pain had been a terrifying confirmation, a brutal punctuation mark on the reality of his abduction. The immediate consequence was a gnawing fear that the events in Phoenix were not isolated, but ongoing, that he was still connected to them in ways he didn't understand and couldn't control. His motivation solidified. He had to find answers, not just for understanding, but for self-preservation. Seeking help was the next logical step, but where to turn? Confiding in Sarah felt impossible. The fear of ridicule, of being labeled insane, was a heavy lock on his tongue. He considered doctors, but the thought of explaining alien abduction to a medical professional felt equally futile. He imagined blank stares, condescending smiles, and a swift referral to a psychiatrist. The conventional world, he realized, was ill-equipped to handle his reality. This became a new challenge, navigating a world that refused to acknowledge the very thing that was consuming him. Driven by a desperate online search, John stumbled upon a local UFO support group. Hesitantly, he attended a meeting, stepping into a dimly lit community hall filled with people who spoke of lights in the sky, missing time, and unsettling encounters. He met a woman named Emily, her eyes holding a weariness that mirrored his own. She spoke of similar experiences, of fragmented memories, and a constant sense of being watched. Emily, with her calm demeanor and shared understanding, became an unexpected lifeline, offering a sense of validation and a pathway forward. The support group meetings expanded John's world beyond his isolated home and workplace. The dimly lit church basement, the hushed voices sharing extraordinary tales, became a new setting, a hidden pocket of reality where the impossible was acknowledged, even discussed openly. He learned about regression hypnosis, a technique some members claimed helped unlock repressed memories of their encounters. This offered a potential path to answers, a way to delve deeper into the fragmented images and sensations that haunted him. However, this new path also presented new challenges. The prospect of hypnosis was daunting, surrendering control of his mind to an unknown process, potentially dredging up even more terrifying memories. And what if it revealed nothing? What if it was all just in his head? Doubt gnawed at him, a constant companion to the fear. Yet the burning need to understand, to reclaim his life from the shadow of the abduction, propelled him forward. A new subplot began to emerge, the physical changes he was experiencing. Beyond the headaches, he noticed an increased sensitivity to light, a heightened awareness of sounds, and a strange tingling sensation beneath his skin, as if his senses were being subtly amplified. Was this a side effect of the abduction, or something more intentional? The question added another layer of complexity to his already overwhelming quest, pushing John further into the uncharted territory of the unknown, driven by the desperate hope of finding answers and the growing fear of what those answers might reveal. The decision to undergo hypnosis felt like a terrifying leap into the dark. The stakes escalated with each passing day as the headaches intensified, morphing from searing pain to a constant, throbbing pressure that clouded his thoughts and undermined his ability to function. His job, already precarious due to his distracted state, teetered on the edge of collapse. He was facing a difficult choice: succumb to the debilitating symptoms and risk losing everything, or confront the terrifying unknown through hypnosis, with no guarantee of answers or relief. Emily, sensing his desperation, became a staunch advocate for regression therapy. Her encouragement was unwavering, but John started to detect subtle shifts in her demeanor, a fervent intensity in her eyes that bordered on unsettling. Was her support entirely altruistic, or did she have her own reasons for pushing him down this path? This question became a burgeoning subplot, a seed of doubt planted in John's already fertile ground of paranoia, adding a layer of unease to his reliance on her. Meanwhile, the silence and secrecy surrounding his experience were tearing apart his marriage. Sarah's concern morphed into frustration, then suspicion. She sensed John's increasing withdrawal, his guarded conversations, the late-night research sessions hidden behind closed doors. Her attempts to connect were met with evasion and vague reassurances, breeding a growing tension between them, a silent battle fought on the grounds of unspoken fears and eroding trust. The subplot of their fracturing relationship became intertwined with the central mystery, adding emotional weight and personal stakes to John's quest for truth. As John prepared for his first hypnosis session, a chilling new sensation emerged, the feeling of being watched. It wasn't just the internal paranoia he had been battling, but a distinct external awareness, a prickling at the back of his neck, the sense of unseen eyes following him. Whether real or imagined, this heightened sense of surveillance amplified the tension, blurring the lines between internal fear and external threat, pushing John further towards the edge of his sanity and into the uncertain depths of his repressed memories. The first hypnosis session was a plunge into the abyss. Guided by the therapist's soothing voice, John descended into the depths of his subconscious, the fragmented memories surfacing with unsettling clarity. The metal table, no longer a fleeting image, solidified into a tangible reality. The cold hands, the black eyes, the sterile environment, they returned with a sensory vividness that was both terrifying and illuminating. But the pivotal moment arrived when a new memory fragment emerged, sharp and focused, a device held by one of the alien figures, aimed directly at his forehead. A blue light, a tingling sensation, a deep vibration within his skull. The details flooded his consciousness, coalescing into a horrifying realization. It wasn't just an abduction, it was an implantation. This revelation was a major turning point. Fear morphed into anger, helplessness into a desperate resolve. John was no longer just a victim, he was actively violated, a host for something alien. The hypnosis sessions became a battleground, a fight to reclaim his mind, to understand the purpose of the implant and how to remove it. He started to push back, to resist the therapist's gentle guidance, driven by a primal urge to confront the truth, no matter how terrifying. This marked a significant character transformation, revealing a hidden strength, a fierce determination buried beneath the layers of fear and anxiety. Unknowingly, John was stepping onto a path that would lead him directly to the climax, a confrontation not just with his past trauma, but with the ongoing, insidious presence of the aliens in his life. The pieces were falling into place. The stage was being set for a final, terrifying act. Driven by the horrifying revelation of the implant, John became consumed by research, his online searches shifting from abduction accounts to the more tangible, albeit equally fringe, world of alleged alien implants. He devoured articles, forum posts, and blurry photos, each piece of information fueling a desperate hope that he wasn't alone in this, and that there might be a way out. He learned about individuals who claimed to have had implants removed, often through unconventional means, their stories a mixture of hope and unsettling ambiguity. A subtle thread of foreshadowing emerged from these accounts. The removal was rarely the end, often just the beginning of another, even more complex chapter. His first minor confrontation came in the sterile environment of a doctor's office. He attempted to explain his escalating headaches and the unsettling feeling that something was physically wrong, carefully omitting the alien abduction part, focusing solely on the neurological symptoms. The doctor, polite but dismissive, attributed his complaints to stress and recommended over-the-counter pain relievers. This encounter solidified John's growing distrust of conventional medicine, further isolating him and pushing him towards more unorthodox avenues of investigation. Desperate, John confided in Emily from the support group, seeking her advice. To his surprise, she revealed she knew someone, a retired surgeon rumored to be open to unconventional cases. This unexpected alliance felt both like a lifeline and a gamble. Dr. Albright, the surgeon, was an enigma, a respected physician who had seemingly stepped outside the rigid boundaries of mainstream medicine. Meeting him felt like entering a different world, a dimly lit office filled with unusual artifacts and an air of quiet intensity. Albright listened to John's story with a surprising lack of skepticism, his gaze sharp and assessing. He didn't dismiss the abduction narrative outright, focusing instead on the physical symptoms, the headaches, the neurological disturbances. He agreed to order specialized scans, higher resolution imaging than John had previously undergone, hinting at a willingness to look beyond the conventional, to consider possibilities others would dismiss. This alliance, born from desperation and shared belief in the unbelievable, became a crucial turning point, offering a glimmer of hope in the encroaching darkness. The results of the specialized scans were unsettling. A faint anomaly, a shadow deep within John's frontal lobe, appeared on the images. Albright, his expression grave, couldn't definitively confirm it was an implant, but he admitted it was unexplained. This minor plot resolution, the visual confirmation of something foreign within John, validated his fears, strengthening his resolve to take the next, terrifying step, exploratory surgery. The decision to undergo brain surgery was a major gamble, a step into the irreversible. He knew the risks, the potential complications, the terrifying prospect of something going wrong. Yet, the alternative, living with the unknown object inside his head, the relentless headaches, the constant fear, was unbearable. He was setting the stage for a major resolution, a confrontation with the physical manifestation of his trauma, a surgical climax that could either liberate him or plunge him deeper into the nightmare. The operating room loomed, a sterile theater where his fate, and perhaps the truth of his abduction, would be decided. The days leading up to the surgery were a blur of heightened anxiety and strained goodbyes. The headaches intensified, now almost constant, blurring the edges of his vision and making coherent thought a struggle. His final obstacle was not just the surgery itself, but the crushing weight of uncertainty. Was the anomaly truly an implant? Would removal solve anything, or would it unleash something worse? These questions gnawed at him, amplified by the relentless throbbing in his head, pushing him to the brink of despair. The emotionally charged stakes were centered on Sarah. He finally broke down, confessing everything: the abduction, the hypnosis, the implant, the surgery. Tears streamed down her face, disbelief warring with terror as she listened to his fragmented, desperate confession. Their relationship, already fragile, hung precariously in the balance. His decision to undergo surgery was not just for himself, but for a desperate chance to reclaim his sanity, to save their marriage from the encroaching darkness of his secret. Saying goodbye to her before the surgery was the hardest thing he had ever done, the unspoken fear of never seeing her again hanging heavy in the air between them. Emily's role also intensified in these final days. Her support became almost suffocating, her calls and visits constant, her insistence on his strength and resilience bordering on manic. A narrative thread of doubt, initially subtle, now tightened into a knot of suspicion. Was she genuinely concerned, or was there something more to her unwavering encouragement? Her presence, once a comfort, now felt like another layer of pressure, another unknown factor in the already volatile equation. As John was wheeled towards the operating room, all the narrative threads converged. His fear for his life, his desperation for answers, his fractured relationship with Sarah, the unsettling intensity of Emily's support, the chilling uncertainty of the alien implant, all culminated in this single, terrifying moment. The sterile lights of the operating room blazed, a stark contrast to the darkness of his fear, illuminating the final stage for the climax, where his fate, and perhaps the truth of his abduction, would be brutally revealed. The operating room became the epicenter of John's reality, the culmination of his desperate search for truth. The surgery itself was a tense blur, the sterile environment amplifying the life or death stakes. Then, the moment of revelation. Dr. Albright emerged, holding a small container, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and something akin to awe. Inside, resting on cotton, was the implant. Tiny, metallic, undeniably alien. Its removal was a decisive victory, the physical manifestation of his trauma finally extracted. The main conflict, the mystery of the implant, was resolved with stark, undeniable proof. The immediate aftermath was a rush of relief and exhaustion. Waking up in recovery, the throbbing headache was gone, replaced by a dull ache from the surgery, a pain he welcomed as real, understandable. Sarah was there, her eyes red-rimmed but filled with a renewed hope. His confession, though terrifying, had opened a path to honesty. The subplot of their fractured relationship began to mend, rooted in the shared trauma and the undeniable evidence of his ordeal. Emily's fervent support, however, now felt different, subtly unsettling in its intensity as she pressed for details, her questions sharp and probing, hinting at unresolved ambiguities within that subplot. The thematic closure resonated deeply. The implant's existence validated John's terrifying experience, forcing a confrontation with the unknown. While the physical object was removed, the psychological and emotional scars remained, a permanent alteration to his worldview. He was changed, irrevocably aware of a reality beyond the mundane, a universe teeming with mysteries both terrifying and awe-inspiring. The story of John's case becomes a chilling reminder. We are not alone, and the answers to the universe's deepest questions may lie in accepting the unbelievable. If you've ever looked up at the night sky and felt a sense of unease, a whisper of something more, then perhaps John's story resonates with a primal fear we all share. Dare to question what you believe, because the truth, like the vastness of space, may be far stranger than you can imagine. The world didn't magically return to normal after the implant was removed. John carried the weight of his experience, a brand etched onto his soul. The headaches ceased, the immediate physical threat neutralized, but the deeper scars remained. The chilling awareness of the alien presence, the shattered certainty of his place in the universe. He and Sarah began to rebuild, their marriage forged anew in the crucible of shared trauma and newfound honesty. The silence was replaced by tentative conversations, slow steps towards understanding and healing. John's fate was not a return to blissful ignorance, but a conscious choice to live with the unsettling truth, forever marked by the extraordinary within the ordinary. He became an unwilling sentinel, forever scanning the skies, not with fear alone, but with a strange mixture of dread and a haunting, unsettling curiosity. Emily's role remained ambiguous. Her intense interest in the implant, her almost predatory fascination, cast a long shadow of doubt. The support group offered solace, but also served as a constant reminder of the vastness of the unknown, the countless others touched by similar mysteries. The epilogue of John's case is not one of neat resolution, but of lingering questions. What was the implant for? What did they truly want? And are they still watching? The moral lesson lingers. Reality is far more fragile and far stranger than we dare to believe. Perhaps the true horror isn't the abduction itself, but the realization of our profound vulnerability in a cosmos teeming with forces beyond our comprehension. John's story, case number 1994, remains open. The buzzing might be fainter now, the light less blinding, but the silence is forever broken. Have you ever felt a prickle of unease looking at the stars? A sense that we are not alone, that something watches from the vast expanse? If John's case resonates with you, if you felt that inexplicable pull of the unknown, share your thoughts. Have you, too, felt the unsettling whisper of the unseen? Let's open a dialogue, because perhaps, in sharing our fears, we can begin to understand the chilling vastness of the universe and our fragile place within it.
So, what did you think of this story? Did it scare you? Was there a part that gave you chills or stuck with you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. If you've had a similar experience or have suggestions for improving future videos, let me know too. Thank you for watching and being part of this amazing community. See you in the next story.